welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners from Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south. In the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful January the 18th, 2021. Ground to Deportes, bonjour, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, is not going too bad down here. We're getting ready for the Final Four in the NFL. There's no West Coast teams left in it. But once again, I want to say thank you to our frontline healthcare workers, nurses, doctors, first responders. You've been doing a great job.
They've been doing a great job. I want to say all around the world. Today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars also all around the world. Just say Google or Alexa or Spotify, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV, or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Man, I love pausing, Big C. Pausing is good, but we will never pause on our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They are experienced helping veterans and their loved ones get help. Big C, why should everyone care?
Well, Charlton, everybody should care. I know everybody is preoccupied with COVID-19, but our veterans have suffered for decades with mental and physical ailments, Charlton, and it has led to suicide. Over 2 dozen a day commit suicide in America. A horrific number, Charlton, that you would think that our Veterans Association would do more than that. The VA hospital would have some type of system, Charlton, that they could help many of these veterans with these issues. They're hurting emotionally, mentally, financially. And there needs to be a cause in America that goes out daily and thinks about our veterans. Our veterans have allowed us to have the lifestyle that we have in America. I know that everybody's preoccupied with COVID-19, but our veterans have been around long before COVID-19 and will still be around after COVID-19.
Yep.
There's no vaccine on the horizon for suicide in America, so it has to become more of a concerted American issue.
Yeah, and I love doing our part, Big C, for our veterans. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. You can definitely get our veterans some help. Time to rise and shine. I also want to say, very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, Direct TV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants, and the Say Hey Kid, as well as the home run King Barry Bonds. Our goal is simple. When you reach out to them, tell them Big C Central. We just want to recruit 10,000 real estate agents and brokers all over this great country, putting properties back on the TV and in the market, just like McDonald's does it, car dealerships do it. Sports teams are doing it too. Watch TV and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. If you're looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com, and you'll see opportunities. Most of our loans are underwritten through Quicken Loans. I also want to say all around the world, in fact, all around the big universe, thanking Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps appear, and I really do appreciate the way things are grown with Big C Sports. Big C, I also want to say today is Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, and I know a lot of times we go through our freedoms, people go through good and bad in life, but there's something about Dr. King and how he sacrificed his own life to try to give hope to everybody. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I don't know if he sacrificed his own life. He was assassinated.
Yeah.
He was killed by a white American. You have to go back and think about all these people that are reveling over Dr. King today on his holiday, Charlton.
Yeah.
Many white Americans, who are going out using statements that Dr. King made. In 1967, Dr. King was the most hated man in America. Think about that. Not that long ago, Charlton, less than 60 years ago, Dr. King was the most hated man in America. He was viled by all of white society. And for those people to go out today, especially senators in Washington, D.C., and speak about Dr. King when their parents hated him, and they hated him also as young adults, Charlton, when they were growing up.
Yeah.
So, I appreciate what Dr. King did as far as the civil rights movement, getting black people to rise up and not stand for the status quo anymore that is advanced society in America and even around the world. I mean, he has a living legacy.
Yeah.
But people must not forget that they hated this man. Even though they might revere him today and speak highly of him,
Yeah.
they hated him at that time.
Yeah, a lot of people did. I remember talking to my mom and dad about growing up in the days of Jim Crow and how oftentimes people just wanted to find a way to take care of their families. They just wanted to find a way to have liberty and justice for everybody. And sometimes, even though they wanted liberty and justice for everybody, they were fought just for wanting that. And I think about that in today's day. I take nothing for granted. I know we've been on pause for a while, Big C, but it's just, as you look at so many things that are happening in life, I think about things my mother's always told me, that you got to rise and shine. And I think about what you just said. We celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. holiday 100 years after the Black Wall Street, 50 years after the Martin Luther King I Have a Dream speech. Black Americans have flipped the U.S. Senate and is now Democratic control. We had over 126 white Republican congressmen and women, oath takers for the Constitution, try to overthrow the United States government. Isn't that something? And now we have the first black woman as the United States Vice President, and she's the deciding vote in the Senate. And you would have thought, with the enmity that Dr. King had by mainstream media, they're so nice and kind to the terrorists who stormed our nation's capital. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, there's two levels of justice in America. There's white justice, because those people look like you, so you will not pull the trigger. You don't feel that your life is threatened, even though they're beating you when you're down on the ground, versus a black man that's walking away and you say you feel threatened, so you had to shoot him 12 times. This is what we've lived with in society in America. I know throughout my lifetime, I've witnessed it too many times. America got to witness it, and now we have all the Republicans saying we need to lower the temperature, we need to find common ground, and yet they're the perpetrators of these crimes that are occurring, that aided and abetted those people who attacked the Capitol.
Yeah.
They swore an oath to serve and protect America against foreign and domestic enemies.
Yeah.
And yet they aided and abetted those domestic enemies, Charlton, to attack our nation's capital, the symbol of freedom in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And yet there's not going to be any people going to jail for it from a political perspective, even though they advocated for it.
Yeah, it happened before in different states back in the 1890s, and they were just trying to overthrow the government, I believe, in Carolina. The ironic thing about it, Big C, is that we found that a lot of law enforcement were complicit in allowing it to happen. And I know that people want to watch sports, and maybe that's part of the problem, because I think about what Dr. King talked about and what my parents told me about. My mom and dad always told me do the right thing and just keep, go above the fray and don't try to go to the lowest form of behavior. And when I think about the Million Man March that happened, I want to say it's right around 1995. There were so many black men that were looking for atonement and how to work together. And it was led by Farrakhan. And a lot of people tried to demonize that march. At the same time, there was no violence. No violence with all the African Americans. And we still have to deal with a lot of garbage. And it's just ironic to me how no one was shot. And we've seen many African Americans lose their lives because they had a cell phone, and law enforcement said, "Oh, we were afraid for our lives, so we had to shoot him 7 times while he was running away." But I just realized that they didn't shoot people. And people say, "Well, they were overwhelmed." Well, if law enforcement's overwhelmed, then who has hope, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, the reason why they didn't shoot these people because they aided and abetted these people.
Yeah.
Those people who were rioting at the nation's capital, Charlton, looked like them. It could have been their brother, could have been their cousin, could have been their uncle, could have been their aunt, could have been their sister. So that's the reason why they didn't shoot them. They did not dehumanize them as they dehumanize black people when they shoot them. They don't see black people as being equal. But they felt bad that they were willing to take a beating from white people, Charlton, and police officers lost their lives in this situation.
Yeah.
But they accepted that because they could not see shooting the person in the mirror. There's no equal justice in America, Charlton, and that's the reason why there's so many minority police shootings in America. Anybody who ever wants to say, well, the police wouldn't have shot them if they hadn't been doing something wrong or provoked the police, all they have to do is look at this assault on the nation's capital and not seeing people pull a trigger as they're being beaten by somebody with a stick, by a baseball bat, with a fire extinguisher, Charlton, with a fence, and saying that they're not in fear of their lives, they're being tased, they're being pepper sprayed. But they use that damn lie every time they shoot a black person. I was in fear of my life. I was threatened. But we watched on television, just like we watched George Floyd be murdered. We watched white people attack white officers, and they said that's okay.
Yeah, I even think about the "I Have a Dream" speech. I have a dream, and I've remembered it so many times because I've heard it so many times. Big C, even I can just hear it in my mind, even when I'm not thinking about it. And before we touch on a little bit of sports, and people say that we need to tamp down the rhetoric and the violence. And I just ask people, because all around the world, people are keeping their eye on America.
Well, and if they want to tap down the rhetoric and the violence, Charlton, why don't you have all the damn Republican senators say this was a fair and equal election? There was no misconduct. There was no stealing. That's how you do it. That's the only way that the rhetoric is going to be tapped down in America, is to say that Joe Biden won a fair and civil election in America. He is the duly elected president of the United States. There was nothing stolen. And you think about it, they were saying there were voter improprieties where there were large black populations. Just like in the 50s and the 60s, black people are not supposed to be able to vote their conscience. And that's what Donald Trump invoked, and that's what those white senators invoked, is that black people had to be doing something nefarious for Joe Biden to be getting elected.
Yeah, and I think about this because all over the world people are paying attention to America. And I remember when the Hoover Commission spied on Dr. King as he was giving his "I Have a Dream" speech, and people were not wanting to give him the benefit of the doubt. Even Kennedy didn't want him to give the speech, Big C. And at the same time, imagine if Dr. King were to espouse what Donald Trump espoused on that day when he told people to go down and take back your country. You can't do it if you're weak. Imagine that. If Dr. King would have given that speech instead of the "I Have a Dream" speech, but people still to this day, at the same time they say let's look for some type of reconciliation, if you don't call people out for committing crimes and inciting crime like Ted Cruz and Donald Trump, then you're complicit. There's no need in asking anyone to pray for somebody if you're not going to call out the people who incited that riot. And I believe 6 people lost their lives. And there happened to be a law enforcement officer that had directed people down a different hallway, or he would have been in there with all the senators and congressional leaders. So, sometimes bad things can reveal things, but it's just the recycle of what's happened in American history. Sometimes people don't tell the truth when the criminals happen to be Caucasian. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when you're telling somebody to go take your country back, what do you tell? Who's you telling that? You're telling white people that, Charlton. Those white people who are disenfranchised because there are minorities in America. There are black people with freedom. There are brown people with freedom. There are Asian people with freedom. And those white supremacists who held America before desegregation, Charlton, that's what Donald Trump was appealing to. Go take your country back where they can't have any part of it and you're in total control. And that's what I've tried to do for 4 years.
Yeah, it's happened. And I really do look at what happened down in the Senate race in Georgia, and I'm glad that Warnock won his race. But you look at Perdue and Loeffler; they're also inciting their bigotry, And the thing that appeals to my sensibility, like my parents always told me, especially my mother, is that decent people come in all shapes and colors, like Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech. So I'm glad that racist rhetoric, it did not work, because enough decent people are trying to do the right things irrespective of their color. And I'm proud of that. And I know in order to go forward, we just can't keep telling people who are bad that they're good. And I think media is part of that. And I don't want to just be a shut up and dribble kind of person, because life is too short for that garbage. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, don't be dissuaded by saying that it worked. Just because Joe Biden got elected as president of the United States, those 74 million people who voted for Donald Trump didn't disappear. They just got pissed off. That's all that was.
Yeah.
And they're going to do this, what they did on the Capitol, more and more, Charlton, over the next 4 years. They're not going to sit on their hands and be quiet and be good little boys and girls. They're going to be as disruptive as they can in American society. What you saw on January 6th was just a preview of things to come for the next 4 years, Charlton. These radicals, leftist liberals, Charlton, are going to constantly come out and create havoc in America. America is not going to be easy. And the problem is, because the majority of them are white, it's very difficult to shoot them. But if they were black, it'd be open season like deer season.
Yeah, they're talking about on the day of the inauguration, which is coming up on the 20th. Today's the 18th. There's also some talk that there's going to storm all 50 state capitals, and you can't even get into Washington, D.C. today without some type of police credential or government credential, Big C. Even law enforcement is being scanned, and I believe they should scan every congressman that goes into the halls for justice, because I just feel at some point in time, just like going into an airport, you got to go through the TSA. You can't just, hey, I've got to go to my plane. They don't just let you through. You got to go through a protocol of safety measures to get on that plane so that nobody's harmed. And one more thing I want to mention, I know you fly a lot, Big C, but you have people like Lindsey Graham, who doesn't know who he is. He's a joke of a person. And you have people like Mitt Romney, who's also a 47% of him was a joke, but now they're trying to turn on the right side of history. They're being shouted down in airports and on airplanes, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when you look at the people who are opposing what they're doing on the Capitol about going through scanners, those are white people. You know, during the protest there in Washington and the riot, I heard one white woman who was being detained by the police. You're not supposed to do this to white people. You're only supposed to do this to black people. And that's the way that they feel, Charlton. When you look at those senators who stood by wanting to overthrow the election, a free and fair election in what's supposed to be a free and equal country, Charlton,
yeah.
They said, no, we got to get rid of those states that those black people control. They can't have a say-so in who's going to be the president of the United States. So when we look at the racial rhetoric that comes from the white people in America still coming today, Charlton, we'll be there on the inauguration. We'll be having protests and riots at state capitals across the country, Charlton. You don't hear black people doing it. It's all white people that are evil.
Well, I just want to make sure that I don't paint everybody with the same brush, because there are some brethren that get on Fox News that are black, and they act like they're not, and they're calling about the same type of garbage and rhetoric that I've heard. Like Dr. King said, it comes in all shapes and colors. That's why he said, judge people not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. My mother told me the same thing, and so did my father. And I just want to make sure that if we're going to pull this country together, remember, we've been going through this for 400 years. It's not going to change in 4 years. We're only going to have more decent people saying, let's shout down that enmity and that animus that comes from predominantly white society, because it wouldn't exist if they didn't teach it in private. It just comes out in public, and that's what Donald Trump tapped into. So I hope that all decent people on Martin Luther King's holiday can really think about what you say in the home comes out in the daylight. People didn't just turn into this in the daylight in one day. It's a lot of stuff has been taught, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you can mention a couple of black people that talk on Fox News. How many of those black people talking on Fox News, and how many white senators do we have in the United States Senate? If they had came out and denounced what Donald Trump was saying that he was lying,
yeah,
that the election was fair, that it was free, there was no illegalities in the election, Charlton, that there was no fraudulence that were done in the election. If they had came out and did that instead of standing up saying that they're going to object to the Electoral College because they don't feel that it's fair. I think the Electoral College should be abolished. Go by the voice of the people. Joe Biden won by 7 million votes. 7 million votes. They can keep talking about 74 million people voted for Donald Trump. Hell, 81 million voted for Joe Biden. So they wanted his butt out of the White House. That's what they wanted. They were disenfranchised by what Donald Trump had done and said, and especially those white suburban moms. They were disenfranchised because he was attacking their kids during Black Lives Matter protests during the summer. And people want to attribute what happened during Black Lives Matter protests to those white people attacking the nation's capital. Those Black Lives Matter protesters did not go and attack our politicians, Charlton.
No.
They didn't do that. But the white people felt that they had the power to do that and the authority to do that, and the police let them do it.
They let them do it. That's the thing, because when people say, well, what about the looting and the rioting? That attacking the nation's capital and burning a building because you don't want people shot and you're trying to get attention, they're not mutually exclusive. Black Americans have never stormed the nation's capital and threatened to hang Mike Pence, the vice president, threatened to hang the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. That came from white people. And it's going to take white people to shut it down. But when people listen to programs like Fox News or, knuckleheads like Rush Limbaugh, that's part of that Confederacy, they just got to they're not two of the same. They're not mutually exclusive. Black Americans have never tried to overthrow the government, just been looking for liberty and justice for all. So that's my thoughts about it, Big C. And, one thing before we touch on some sports, because a lot more things in life are important. I don't take anything for granted. Every day is a blessing. We got to open our eyes and enjoy the blessing. And I just appreciate everything that I've ever learned in life. And I'm really looking forward to how things progress with this new administration. But holding Joe Biden's feet to the fire or holding him accountable too. And just like people were holding Donald Trump accountable, not everybody, but a lot of people didn't. But I just want to do my part when we're on the air. I don't want to be like these dumb guys that just saw our nation's capital attacked and they're saying, hey, what do you think about that football game? Oh, who do you think is going to get drafted first? Our nation just got attacked by nationalist white terrorists. Hey, what do you think about the basketball season? That's part of why it happened. Because so many people have been told to be dumb, Big C, your thoughts.
Well, those people, Charlton, work for people who donated to the president's finances and campaign funds.
Yeah.
So they're going to be complicit because that's what they're told to do.
Yeah. Malcolm X said, boss, we sick? We, huh? It's all fair and love and war. I want to say today's show also sponsored by Budweiser Zero. It has 0% alcohol. It also goes great with the Big C burger. It is a tasty burger. It comes with exotic meats. And it goes great with the Budweiser Zero. There's a lot that happened, Big C. Again, everybody have a dream. Make it come true. Love the people you love. Tell them you love them every day. And that's what I love doing. I want to touch on a little bit of football, Big C. Or if you have anything else you want to say, just for paying homage to MLK holiday and in hopes of going forward. And sometimes it's like Groundhog Day. But if we don't have somebody to speak about righteousness, then nobody will. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, hopefully, Charlton, I hope to see it in my lifetime, that we get equality in America.
Yeah. Well, we can at least have equal voice, and if we're not muzzled, then we can be that equality as much as we can do. But I want to touch on what happened in the world of NFL football, because we're coming down to the Final Four, as you mentioned. And I want you to know, because you said something that was not true, and I always kind of hold you Southern people, you Southern people, if that makes sense to you, Big C, to the fire, if that makes sense. You said there were no West Coast teams, therefore no West Coast people in the NFL playoffs. I'm going to say you're wrong, because the NFL has built up a system where they try to pay quarterbacks the most money. And if you think about this, Tom Brady did a great job in his 14th championship. Bill Belichick, not the greatest. It was Tom Brady that helped the Patriots do so much. 3 California high school football players are in the conference finals. When you think about it, Big C, Sarah High School, San Mateo, Tom Brady. Pleasant Valley High School of Chico and Butte Community College in Aaron Rodgers. And then you have the good old boy from Fireball High School that's leading the Buffalo Bills. And I'm telling you, if Patrick Mahomes doesn't play, then I wouldn't be too surprised if we see Buffalo to the Super Bowl. But that's going to be 3 out of 4 high school quarterbacks that started in California. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, every roster, Charlton, is sprinkled with players that came from California, sprinkled with players that came from Texas, Florida. So when we look at that in totality, but I mean, when you look at the impact players beyond the quarterbacks, where did those players come from? I mean, yes, those quarterbacks always get the notoriety and the ink when a team wins and when they lose. But when you look at those quarterbacks that are out there, only one of them played in California when he was in college.
Yep, that's the great touchdown Aaron Rodgers, who I'm saying is going to be this league's or this year's NFL MVP. It should be noted. Tom Brady, ironically, was going to go to Cal Berkeley. His father wanted him to go to Cal Berkeley, but I guess he wanted to go where it snowed, Big C, for some reason. He was tired of the sunshine in the 70-degree weather in the wintertime, so he decided to go back to Michigan and play for the Wolverines. But when you think about that, and then out of Fireball, California, by way of another junior college, which was called, I think it's called Kings River Junior College in Reedley, California, Josh Allen. And then he had to go to Wyoming, which is the highest elevation in the country for college football. And now those 3 guys are in the NFL playoffs, and then Patrick Mahomes is out of Texas. So that you could say maybe part of the Texas, and some of it's located on the West. But I say all the quarterbacks are at least from the West. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, Chad Henne had the game-winning drive for the Kansas City Chiefs, Charlton, and he played in Michigan just like Tom Brady did.
Yeah, yep.
But when you think about it, Charlton, why wasn't any of the California students able to keep these quarterbacks there? I mean, you even think about Aaron Rodgers. He had to go the junior college route, and when he went to Cal wasn't even thought of as the top team in the Pac-12.
Yeah, well, they competed with USC once he got there, and that was just a great day of football back in the day. But I think about what's going on in the world of the NFL, and there's a lot of things that have taken place. Number one, to even get to this point in a COVID-19 situation where so many players, they opted out of the season, Big C, especially the New England Patriots had a lot of guys opt out, so maybe that's why Bill Belichick decided to watch the playoffs on TV as opposed to being a part of the playoffs. But when I think about that, of all the players and of all the leagues that are able to do it, I'm saying the NFL, yeah, they've had some positive COVID tests. The NBA did not, as far as I understand. Maybe they had a couple. But they did this outside, traveling from city to city, and I think they've done a massive job containing it as much as possible. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, they've done a decent job in containing it. They haven't done a masterful job. Talking to many players that have missed because of COVID-19. Even in the playoffs, in the Elite Eight of the teams that were left this past weekend, there were several players who could not play because of COVID-19. Taysom Hill, the backup quarterback in New Orleans, could not be around the team because of that. So as we look at COVID-19 spreading more and more, the NFL has a makeup policy. I mean, they brought players off the practice roster because offensive linemen weren't available, running backs weren't available. Alvin Kamara wasn't available last week. So as you look at the NFL, they have an ability, because they have players that are sitting around hidden, basically called the practice roster, that they can bring them up. Not only that, even in the playoffs, you can pluck a player off a team's practice roster who was not in the playoffs and insert him in the lineup because he's been active all year, basically practicing, so he's game ready.
Yeah, they've done whatever they can. When they were just at one time, a lot of college programs canceled everything, and everybody's going to do what they want. I just thoughts and prayers for everyone that we do have a COVID-19 vaccine, a couple of other therapies that they're even talking about an inhaler that people can inhale it. They're working on that in laboratories too, so I hope the best with science and all that. We're going to take what's called the Big C pause, and when we come back, we're going to hit heavy on some NFL football and even some thoughts of the college football and how, I mean, it's going to be we have a great Final Four in the NFL. We'll take the Big C pause, and in the words of the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, we'll be back. All right, we're back from the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow us on Alexa, Spotify. There's so many applications. and I really do appreciate the growth of Big C Sports. I want to thank Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say, play Big C Sports Podcast, and you will see all of our apps pop up. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and we'll do our thing. And people don't have to like it, but you always say is Google what we say, and let's get some integrity back into the world of broadcast and not just people that want us to say dumb down. Big C, NFL, divisional playoffs. I want to get your thoughts. Buffalo 17, the Baltimore Ravens 3. It was the Green Bay Packers 32, the LA Rams 18, Tampa Bay Buccaneers 30, New Orleans Saints 20, and Kansas City Chiefs 22, Cleveland Browns 17. But I want to start with the Buffalo and Baltimore game. This was a game that I surely thought that Baltimore had as good a chance as anyone to win this game. And without the pick six that was thrown by Superman Jackson, they had a chance to tie it and maybe even win it without missing so many field goals. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I think the major difference in this game was Justin Tucker. I mean, this is a robo kicker who does not miss. The most accurate kicker in the history of the NFL. Missed 2 early field goals, which really set the tempo for this game.
Yeah.
Because when you think about the game between the two teams, Baltimore and Buffalo, Baltimore actually outplayed Buffalo in this game.
Yeah.
You look at the Bills, they only scored 1 offensive touchdown. So they have to be some concerns with their offensive scheme going into next week's championship game in Kansas City.
Yeah.
Can they keep up with the powerful Kansas City Chiefs offense? Their defense stymies the Baltimore running game. But Baltimore has to look into their future. They need to find some wide receivers that can play. They cannot always rely on just the running game being a one-dimensional team without having that threat that can go over the top, that big receiver that can go out and demand attention from a secondary. They don't have that. They run through Andrews, their tight end on offense. So there's a lot of limitations when you look at the Baltimore offense. You shut down the run, you basically shut down the offense because they look to pass as a secondary effectiveness to their offense. Josh Allen, I mean, when you talk about he and Stephon Diggs, these two guys are on the same page. I think they paint with the same watercolor brush. They go out there and they play masterfully together. Singletary impressed me running the ball, for Buffalo, but the defense stepped up when they needed to. They're kind of on the smaller side, but they're quick, and they were able to stop that Baltimore running game.
Yeah, and think about it. The Bills knocked off the Ravens 17-3. And that was Saturday. They only had 32 rushing yards, and that marked the 4th fewest rushing yards by any team in the playoff win in the NFL's history, Big C. The good news for Buffalo, 1999 Rams had 2 playoff wins with fewer than 32 rushing yards because Kurt Warner was doing his thing. In 2014, the Patriots had the other such game. Both won the Super Bowl that season. And everybody has this idea that you got to go to the big schools. Like you talked about earlier, why are people leaving the West Coast for the South? Not everybody. Wyoming's not necessarily West Coast, but it's definitely not the South. You have Josh Allen, who prepped at high school in Fireball, California, junior college in Reedley, California, near Fresno, went to Wyoming, and he might be the hottest quarterback. I'm even including touchdown Aaron Rodgers going into the playoffs. I think if Patrick Mahomes plays, then the Chiefs will win because I think they can just outscore Buffalo. But give me your thoughts on a player that, just like Aaron Rodgers, touchdown Aaron Rodgers, we have 2 junior college transfers that are playing for a chance to go to the Super Bowl. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when I watched that game, Charlton, he seemed kind of wild in that game when you talk about Allen, that he really wasn't up for the big moment because you didn't see him with any huge dynamic plays. Yes, he had some consistent passes, but he overthrew a lot of open receivers in that game. I think he was a little overjuiced.
Well, it was windy. It was windy too, Big C. It was windy.
Bit, going into Arrowhead because that's a different scenario.
Yeah.
You can't make the mistakes against Kansas City that you can make against Baltimore and get away with it. These two teams met earlier in the year.
Yeah.
And the difference was Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah. Well, it was also so windy that even Tucker missed some field goals. There were guys that just could not get their hands on the ball. Even when it was just like trying to catch a fish in the water, Big C. It's hard to. It kept moving out of the way. So the wind played. I mean, both teams had to play in the wind, but I think that affected both teams too. But I'm looking forward to what it does for a lot of junior college athletes. If you don't get recruited by some of the big blue blood programs, You just think about the opportunity to get your chance, and when you get your chance, you got to make the most of it. I want to touch on something that I think happened also, because it's just an opinion. I thought Lamar Jackson had a fabulous season. He played with COVID-19. I think he's the only quarterback, and I may be wrong, that was afflicted with COVID-19 that was able to get into the playoffs. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it affected so many players through the season, Charlton. COVID-19 it did not discriminate against anybody.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's what, made him lack of a player that he was last year. It's hard to repeat when you have a dynamic MVP season. You don't normally get back-to-back MVPs in the NFL.
Yeah.
But so many defenses were ready for what his style of play was this year that was not going to let him be as dynamic as he was last year.
Yeah.
But still, it comes down to not COVID-19, it comes down to winning the big game.
Yeah.
Getting through the regular season, getting to the playoffs is fine.
Yeah.
That means you play a game and you take a pay cut in the NFL. When
Yeah.
you make the playoffs and you lose in the first round, you're taking a pay cut.
Yeah, I know a lot of guys, they got so much money, a pay cut doesn't really affect them the way it would a person in 9-to-5 jobs. But congratulations, Buffalo, you did it. The great Jim Kelly, touchdown Jim Kelly, Thurman Thomas. You think about all those great players that were part of the tally, part of the Buffalo Bills team, and now they get a chance. If they can knock off the Chiefs, they'll be back in the Super Bowl after going to 4 in a row way back in the 90s. So I really look forward to seeing what happens when they go into Kansas City. Big C, I want to stick to another game that happened on Saturday. And the Packers knocked off the LA Rams. Touchdown Aaron Rodgers was not really sharp. He wasn't sharp, but they still put up a 3 spot on the scoreboard, Big C. They dominate the Rams with record-setting offensive performance. The Packers racked up 484 yards of total offense, and they beat the top-ranked Rams defense with an asterisk because Aaron Donald was injured. He was injured the previous week up in Seattle. But that divisional playoff win Saturday was important. Think about this, Big C. 484 total yards were the most allowed in a playoff game by the number one total defense since the 1970 merger. Also marked the most in playoff win in Packer history. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, the Packers have been hot all year, Charlton. They won their division, and they kept pace by beating up on the Rams. I mean, you come in with a defense in the cold that's used to coming from sunny Southern California,
yeah.
And you got to go up where the snowflakes have fallen. I mean, that's
Yep.
a gut check, technically, for athletes that are not used to being in the cold.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers had a decent game. He had some passes that got away from some receivers that seemed to be right on the money, but he was able to throw his touchdowns, and Jared Goff was not able to. They were able to establish a solid running game.
Yeah.
But the story of this game was about the Packers' defense being all over the Rams' offense. If you look at Cam Akers, he ran rush shots over the Seattle Seahawks defense. He could hardly find a seam against that Green Bay Packers defense.
Yep.
And the Packers used a 3-headed monster in the backfield, and they ran all over the Rams defense. I know that Aaron Donald's a Superman on defense.
Yeah, he is.
But you got 10 other players out there to aid him, and they couldn't stop the Packers' running game, nor could they put any pressure on Aaron Rodgers. He sat back in the pocket and had a party all afternoon.
Yeah, he was partying like it's 1999, Big C. And speaking of partying, I do hear they party quite a lot up in Chico. It was considered the number one at Chico State, was considered the number one party school in the universe by Playboy magazine. Why would they know about a college campus? That was way back in the 80s, though. But touchdown Aaron Rodgers. He throws 2 touchdown passes at Lambeau Field, and that set a playoff record. Think about it, Big C. 2 touchdown passes, no interceptions. The Packers won on Saturday, and Rodgers has 13 touchdown passes since his last interception in a playoff game at Lambeau Field. The most passing touchdowns without an interception by a single player at any stadium in the NFL postseason history. The previous record, it was held by the great touchdown Drew Brees with 12 touchdown passes without an interception at the Superdome down there in New Orleans from 2007 to 2018. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, Aaron Rodgers, this is the first time that they've had the championship game at Lambeau Field, since they went to the Super Bowl. So he's excited about playing at home. They have that mental edge over opposing teams to come into Lambeau.
Yeah.
Next week, the temperature is supposed to be about 22, 23 degrees, Charlton, at kickoff. So that's going to be a mind-blowing thing for those Tampa Bay players when they go up to Lambeau Field.
Yeah. I'm telling you, it's going to be, because you were saying, number one, I was telling you, That's why I call you the Mystic. And I know you don't like red wine. You probably pour it out, so I won't send it to you unless you ask me. But I was saying that Tom Brady, I still got a week. I said he wouldn't get back to the Super Bowl. And it may even be knocked out in the first round of the playoffs. They chose not to get knocked out in the first round of the playoffs by Washington. But he did get this team back to the NFC Championship game for the first time. He's always been there on the AFC side. But I was thinking, erroneously so, that he could not throw the ball deep downfield. But as I watch what happened in the game, especially on this weekend's game against New Orleans, he still can't throw that far downfield. He had a horrible game, but their defense paved the way to the NFC Championship game. It wasn't his offense, but he's good enough to lead a team that hadn't been in the playoffs in many, many moons. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is Tom Brady's 14th finals appearance since he's been in pro football, Charlton.
Yeah.
13 in New England and his first year in Tampa. The Super Bowl is going to be in Tampa this year. This is also the site of Buffalo's first Super Bowl loss to the New York Giants on the wide right.
Yep.
So it could be iconic that Tom Brady potentially could play in his home stadium in his first year in the NFC in the Super Bowl, Charlton.
Yeah.
You know, it would be one of those dynamic things that people never expect.
Yeah, he would have to ask Aaron Rodgers, touchdown! Aaron Rodgers, but that's okay. But think about Brady, the man at Sarah High School in San Mateo. He was a senior in high school when many coaches right now were just teenagers running around with their fathers at stadiums. But Tom Brady becomes the oldest player. Think about this. The oldest player to score a touchdown in a playoff game. I think about guys like George Blanda from way back in the day, Big C. The oldest player in the NFL, think about it, in a playoff game, 43 years old. A lot of guys at 43 are sitting on the sofa eating bonbons and popcorn. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, when you only got a half yard to go, it's not that far. We're like to put out there and outmanage anybody in that situation. So, I mean, to get to that point, to be 43 years old playing in the NFL is phenomenal within itself. And Andy, he's defeated Father Time when it comes to athleticism in that great game, Charlton.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what Tom Brady does never, surprises anybody.
Yeah.
And so to think about where he is in his career, how comfortable he is with the talent around him, you got to think about early in the season. I think about week 6 of the season where, Green Bay went into Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
And it wasn't too good of an afternoon for Green Bay. They suffered their first loss of the season.
Yeah.
So Tampa Bay has the defensive tools to slow down Aaron Rodgers and that Green Bay offense. I mean, this is one of the best defenses in the NFL. When you think about what Todd Bowles has done on that side of the football,
Amazing.
It's been phenomenal. I mean, Drew Brees, I don't think he completed a pass that was more than 12 yards all afternoon yesterday.
Yeah.
So Todd Bowles can dial up the defense. They have a great set of linebackers. The defensive line can get the consistent pressure on the quarterback, and the secondary in Tampa has been outstanding. So it's going to be a true challenge when it comes down to that. Tom Brady's used to playing in the cold.
Yeah.
I think the guys from Tampa can withstand it for 3 hours.
I don't think so, Big C, but I've been known to be wrong at times. It's all fair and love and war. Also, great Hall of Famer Jerry Rice scored a pair of touchdowns for the Raiders at age 40 in the 2002 postseason. So I think it gives a lot of men. I used to always laugh at this former baseball player. His name is Frank Thomas. He's always lifting weights and taking some type of supplement, trying to get bigger. It's like, Frank, are you going out for the team again? Well, maybe he should. Jerry Rice, 40 years old, scored 2 touchdowns in the postseason, and now you have touchdown Tom Brady, 43 years old, and scoring touchdowns in the NFL. So I wish
well,
those.
Charlton, you'd be surprised how many older athletes use Viagra to get ready for a game now.
Yeah. Hey, well, maybe we should all use some Viagra, Big C, if it makes you score a touchdown. If it makes you score, why not use it if that makes sense to you, Big C? It's all fair in love and war. I want to take you to a game that, to me, it had so much meaning for Drew Touchdown Brees. When you think about it, Drew Touchdown Brees, based on that one game, retired. It's ironic that Jameis Winston threw the touchdown pass for the Saints, Big C, that long pass, kind of a trick play if that makes sense to you, but he threw the long touchdown pass, and then they brought him back to the sideline. Now, just a thought, Drew Touchdown Brees didn't throw a long touchdown pass all day. They gave your friend Jameis Winston one chance to throw a deep pass, and he completed it for a touchdown. Yet at no point in time was there ever a thought of trying to win the game. That was less important than getting Drew Touchdown Brees to close out the season. Big, so your thoughts?
Well, I put all that loss on Sean Payton. You got one of the best defenses in the NFL in New Orleans. I mean, it was a battle back and forth between the two defenses. You look at that play where Jameis Winston threw the touchdown.
Yeah.
That was a play that the New Orleans Saints took a page from the Chicago Bears from the previous week, where they ran the same play and Mitch Trubisky threw it and the receiver dropped it in the end zone, and New Orleans came back with that same play and got a touchdown out of it. I think that, Sean Payton was trying to let Drew Brees go out ceremonially.
Yeah.
Playing the entire game in his last game of his NFL career, and not truly giving New Orleans Saints an opportunity to win the game. If you'd have brought Jameis Winston into the game, Charles, you had somebody who could at least threaten the secondary.
Exactly.
And get the receivers open down the field. They don't do that with Drew Brees. I mean, you see people crowding the line of scrimmage. The safeties are playing at 10 yards deep against the New Orleans offense. Against the Saints. Drew Brees can't get the ball to the sideline. I mean, receivers are having to stop, having to dip down to catch the ball when he throws it. We saw Drew Brees play his last game as an NFL quarterback. He'll be in the broadcast booth next year, most likely, for Fox Television. But Drew Brees, I mean, has had an outstanding career. He has nothing to look back on.
No.
I mean, you think about what Drew Brees did in his NFL career. He was the quarterback in San Diego prior to Phillip Rivers showing up.
That's right.
And he stayed there for another year until he injured his shoulder. He was the quarterback that Nick Saban wanted to sign down in Miami, but the doctors would not clear him medically. So that changed the landscape of college football and made Alabama the most dominant team in college football for the past 12 years, because the New Orleans Saints got Drew Brees and the Miami Dolphins didn't. Think about how that affected both of those franchises.
Exactly.
The New Orleans Saints skyrocketed upwards. The Miami Dolphins plummeted. Drew Brees went on to set every NFL record as far as a quarterback goes, other than being surpassed by Tom Brady this year in the touchdown category, Charlton. But he's had a wonderful career. I mean, nothing to be, upset about.
Right.
He got one Super Bowl out of it. But what he was able to do throughout his career, Charlton, there's only one other quarterback that can even be in his neighborhood. And that's Tom Brady.
Tom Brady. And they get a nice exchange at the end of the game. They were showing on television where I guess it was Drew Brees' kids. They got together, was playing, and the daughter didn't care. She's like, "Daddy, I want to do some flips. Daddy, I don't care that you might retire. I want to do some flips." I thought that was funny, but a great scene. And I just congratulate Drew Touchdown Brees. Whether he retires or comes back, he really put New Orleans in the championship contention almost every year. There should be a statue of Drew Touchdown Brees outside of that stadium coming sometime soon. Big C, I want to take you to another game that is going to conclude this preview. We're going to do more previews coming up over the week. I'm going to get your thoughts. But touchdown Patrick Mahomes, he matches a pair of Hall of Famers. Think about this, the record before the injuries. He left the game with a concussion on concussion protocol against the Browns on Sunday, but not before the match. I think he matched a pair of postseason records held by Hall of Fame quarterbacks thanks to a rushing touchdown and a passing touchdown. He has 14 career postseason touchdowns, matching the great Hall of Famer Kurt Warner, that record for the most in a player's first 6 career playoff games. And then touchdown Patrick Mahomes had at least one passing touchdown, at least one rushing touchdown in 3 consecutive playoff games. That matches Hall of Famer the great Steve Young for the longest streak of all time. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you look at Patrick Mahomes in this game, and he's with the Kansas City Chiefs, I know they didn't cover the spread.
Never do.
Everybody was saying, how vulnerable they were. I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs play with people. And even in this situation where this game was close because Mahomes got knocked out, they dominated the Cleveland Browns all afternoon, Charlton. They were all over. I mean, a couple of missteps by the Chiefs, but Chad Henne was able to come in and pull it out. But the defense, once again, was able to shut down the top running game in the playoffs. Last year, they shut down Derrick Henry. This year, they shut down Chubb and Hunt for the Cleveland Browns. When it comes time to play the game, the Kansas City Chiefs rise up. Maybe the Atlanta Falcons need to give that slogan to the Chiefs, because rising up is what they did. They play to the level of the opponents that they have. And ironically, they end up beating them.
Yeah, but not so fast, my friend. The words of the great Lee Corso. There's a time where Cleveland was about to take that ball into the end zone right before halftime, and the player fumbled the ball and it went out of the side of the end zone. And so that was a 7-point swing right there. And then touchdown Patrick Mahomes, because of Eric Bieniemy, the great offensive coordinator that can't get a job, 3 years in a row in the AFC Championship game, has a Super Bowl win. They didn't just take a knee and run out the clock. They drove downfield with touchdown Patrick Mahomes and kicked the field goal. So that was a 10-point swing in the last 2 minutes of that game. Cleveland could have won that game, Big C, but there's something about the defense that Kansas City plays. They play it well enough to win, but if they don't play better, they'll have a hard time beating the Buffalo Bills. Give me your thoughts on that 10-point swing within 2 minutes of the first half, Big C, your thoughts.
Well, I don't believe that Cleveland could have won that game, Johnson. You got to look at Baker Mayfield since he's been the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. Anytime that they've had a 10-point deficit, Charlton, since he's been the starting quarterback, and I think he took over like week 4 or 5 against the New York Jets in his rookie year.
Yep.
They are 0-22 when they have a 10-point deficit. 0-22. So they can't win. It might have looked good on television, but this is what I said about Kansas City. They play up to the opponent. Cleveland goes down and fumbles the ball through the end zone for a touchback. Kansas City comes down the field in less than 30 seconds and kicks a field goal.
Yeah.
They play when they want to play. They go out and they tease you. It's like that girl you chased around in high school. All she did was tease. That's what the Kansas City Chiefs did. They let you think that you're going to be close. All of a sudden, they just pull away and the other guy looks cuter. And you left there all alone.
Yeah.
That's what the Kansas City Chiefs do to their opponents.
Yeah, but they can't keep playing that game because it will bite them if they do that against the Buffalo Bills, Big C. I do want to get your thoughts on something because it bothers me, and it shouldn't bother me, but I believe you give credit where credit is due. My parents always taught me that. What is it about Andy Reid that's the head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs? But you got guys like Jim Nantz and Tony Romo, who's like the guy in the movie theater. He keeps trying to tell you the play they're going to run, and he's so wrong this year. He was a hot flash in the pants last year, but he was so wrong this. They're going to just down it. They're trying to draw them outside. What? They're past it? That was when they went for 4th and 1 in the end with Henning. What is it about Eric Bieniemy that none of our national media want to say what a great offensive coordinator, Big C? Your thoughts?
He's black, Charlton. Simple as that. He's black. You don't want to give praise to a guy who has led the most dynamic offense in the NFL over the past 3 years, and he's a minority. People have a hard time saying black leadership in America.
Yeah.
That's what you would be giving to Eric Bieniemy if you sit there and you told everybody how great he was. You watch a team and other coaches, Charlton, and all these white coordinators get all the publicity in the world. I watched the Buffalo game when Dabo, they constantly showed their offensive coordinator up in the press box, talked about how dynamic that he was.
Yeah.
And he will be a great NFL head coach. You get that from white guys who have 1 year success in the NFL. It's just like the Rams defensive coordinator got the head coaching job today with the Chargers. 1 year as a defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
He's never had a head coaching job, not even in high school, Charlton.
No.
But yet now he's the Chargers head coach. So it's the color recognition. You don't see blacks getting jobs. I mean, no one's talking about Leslie Frazier, the Bills defensive coordinator who once was the head coach of the Vikings, getting another job. No one's talking about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defensive coordinator, Todd Bowles.
He's good.
Getting another opportunity. And yet the last 2 years, he's had a top 5 defense in the NFL, Charlton. No one's talking about Byron Leftwich, the offensive coordinator in Tampa.
Yeah.
Last year, he had Jameis Winston throw for 5,000 yards and 30 touchdowns.
Yep.
This year, he has Tom Brady throw for 42 touchdowns, 43 touchdowns, and 4,300 yards. No one's talking about Byron Leftwich being a head coach in the NFL. Minorities are being shunned, Charlton. It is the nature of the beast. The owners are white. When they sit down and interview somebody, they want somebody that they're comfortable with, and they can use the same type of rhetoric that Donald Trump used.
Yeah, winning's not as important as having someone with the same skin color running your offense. 2 African-American offensive coordinators are in the AFC and the NFC championship game, 1 for the 3 years in a row. Would Holly win the championship 3 times in a row? It's all fair and love and war. So we have a lot of good football coming up over this weekend. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers will go into Lambeau Field, and they may be on frozen pond, in my opinion. And then you have the Buffalo Bills. They're going to head to the Midwest and take on the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. Big C, I know concussion protocol was the Ben O'Malley movie and the NFL settled the CTE lawsuit. I felt bad when I saw Patrick touchdown Mahomes. He was struggling to stand up on his feet, Big C, but at the same time, boxers do it all the time. They give them a standing 8 count and they let them fight again. So football's doing their part. They want to make sure no one gets injured. But the talk about Patrick Mahomes may not be ready for the game, just keep saying that until kickoff, Big C. I know they have to, for the betting purposes, they got to say who's hurt on the IR, but he's going to play. He was running down the steps, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Patrick Mahomes was hit with what they call an illegal hit, what we used to do all the time back in those days. He was clotheslined.
Yeah.
So I know that the player will be receiving a letter from the commissioner office about the illegal hit. And I don't know why the officials did not throw a flag on their play, because you're not allowed to go above the shoulder pads to tackle a player around the neck, which is what happened to Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
And he suffered a concussion from there. He's going to play in the game. When you talk about the face of the NFL, if Patrick Mahomes doesn't play, you might as well take the logo off the field, because that's how synonymous they are with each other. Yes, he will go through all the concussion protocol, but that independent doctor is about, I believe he's from the state of Missouri.
Yeah.
But show me he's not biased. That's what I'm going to look at.
Yeah.
Regardless of what the NFL says, Patrick Mahomes would be out there.
Yeah.
And the NFL needs that, Charlton. You need to have your best players on the field.
Yeah.
If it was COVID, it'd be a different story. Concussion, you can get through that. He's going to go through every, analogy that you can to be ready for this game. But the NFL needs him to be out there.
Yeah, they need him to be out there, and he will be out there. But I just appreciate these men and women that are part of professional sports organizations, whether it was WNBA, the NBA, with the Lakers winning a championship and the Dodgers winning a championship, and so many people that have put together, the doctors, the first responders, that made it possible for our athletes to keep playing games. So I know we have a lot going forward. Today's Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, and 100 years ago we had the Black Wall Street. That was also, mobs tore that down. They were white mobs that tore it down, and the government let it happen, and law enforcement was also a part of that let it happen. And so everybody's going to talk about the greatness of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., that we have a dream we shall all overcome, but we can never be the great country that we can be if we let people who are criminals get off just because they're white, and even politicians that incite riots. I think they should all lose their ability to run our country. They took an oath, and they violated the oath, and they did it for their own Confederate reasons. And quit turning a blind eye. If they can videotape and spy on Dr. King, they can investigate every one of those senators that looked to overthrow the election. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, they know who did it, but this is like the police policing the police. These politicians are going to cover each other's butt when it comes to that. And even though you may have evidence on them, you're going to say that they weren't physically a part of that. And you just can't take words and get somebody for it. Yes, if you incite a riot, you incite. If you get aid in a bed for showing people around the Capitol, you were complicit in what was going on.
Of course.
Everybody knows what was going on, Charlton. But when the news stations are not accurate, and I don't care who it is, Fox, MSNBC,
yep,
CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS, if you don't call a spade, Charlton, then you're left with what we've had for the last 4 years.
Yeah.
So when somebody is lying, you say they're lying.
Pull them
when
off
somebody has some improprieties, you have to call that out.
Yep.
You just can't sit there and say, we're not sure. You know damn well what happened.
Yeah, I believe they should be censored, fined, whatever it is. And that's part of the FCC. They own all of those stations. And that's my opinion. And I wish everybody the best coming up on this Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. I wish everybody the very best. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man. And he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in this sports universe?
Well, Charlton, I'm hoping in 2021 that the West Coast grows up. Maybe we'll get one of those teams in the Final Four of the NFL playoffs, Charlton, and maybe we'll get one of those teams in the Final Four of the college football playoffs. But I want to say thanks to our frontline healthcare workers, nurses, doctors, first responders, and especially our National Guard troops that are protecting Washington, D.C.
Yeah, and just so you know, Big C, the Lakers and the Dodgers aren't 2 championships enough. It's all fair and level war. It's all fair and level war. Everybody rise and shine. Always do the very best you can in life. Really do appreciate that. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. And all the apps that we have out there, just keep in mind, there's never ever an excuse. Like my mama always told me, there's no excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help. Because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.